Looking at the world around us, we see an incredible diversity of life. One can wonder about how this all came to be and when it started. Sometimes, to answer such broad questions, it's useful to zoom in to the fundamentals. In this case, they are atoms, the building blocks of molecules, which make up life when combined. So the first question that needs to be tackled is, where on earth did these elements come from? And the answer might surprise you, not on Earth at all.
The periodic table shows all 98 elements that we know to exist. However, in the beginning of our universe, the only elements present were hydrogen, helium, traces of tritium, beryllium, and lithium. So where did the other elements come from? The answer is found in an astronomical occurrence called supernova. It occurs at the end of a star's life, when it becomes too heavy so that nuclear fusion can no longer counteract the gravitational collapse. This stage is reached when the star builds up an iron core through nuclear fusion. Then the gravitational energy becomes much greater than the energy produced during the nuclear fusion. This causes a gravitational collapse and the star to implode. During this implosion, the energy gets high enough to break the iron down into alpha particles and other small units. The pressure continues to increase due to the implosion, forcing free protons and electrons to combine to form neutrons. When this happens, a great number of neutrinos is released, causing a neutrino shock wave that will carry the outer layers of a star away in an explosion. During this explosion, the elements formed during nuclear fusion are released into outer space, where more elements are formed during nuclear synthesis. Supernovae also play an important role in stellar evolution, allowing for great diversity in star composition. They enrich the molecular clouds that are the birthplaces of stars. Thus, the composition of newly formed stars out of such a cloud is slightly different to purely hydrogen and helium-based stars. Stars formed in such clouds tend to have a core with relative high concentrations of iron, which has positive impact on the lifespan of the star and its stability, which in turn influences the possibility of having planets orbiting it. For example, the composition of our solar system is a result of a nearby supernova.
Focusing on our Earth, we ask ourselves how these lifeless elements combine to turn into complex, unique living organisms, of which there are so many present in today's world. Looking at the most simple forms of life we know today, the bacteria, you see that these are actually rather complex. If these organisms are already complex molecular machines, the earliest forms of life must have been much, much simpler.
The physical and chemical processes that occur on Earth sometimes happen to make organic molecules. The general idea is that somehow these organic molecules started to interact. Eventually, natural selection led to complex communicating molecules that eventually were able to perform metabolism, replicate themselves, and store information. How exactly the processes work, we do not know, but there are two major hypotheses about the origin of life. One of them is that life started with RNA. RNA is a molecule similar to DNA that can function both as information storage and as a catalyzer for reactions, like proteins do. The RNA world hypothesis states that RNA would spontaneously have formed from free occurring nucleic acids. Mistakes in self-replication led to natural selection. Once the RNA molecules got trapped inside a membrane, evolution introduced the catalyzation of proteins, metabolism, and more stable double-stranded DNA as information storage. Although this is the most popular theory, not everything is explained nor understood yet. An opposing hypothesis states that not the RNA originated first, but metabolism. Through reactions and hydrothermal vents in the deep sea, early biochemical pathways would have emerged. From here, metabolic cycles are formed in some sort of protocell. Evolution then introduced proteins and DNA into the protocells. Combined, this is a cell. Again, many steps in the process are not understood. After this early origin of life, once cells had evolved into the earliest bacteria, life has left a signature in the Earth's crust. So from the origin of life onwards, life evolved via natural selection in a struggle for life, in which the fittest organisms have most chance of survival. Thus, many of the organisms have become extinct, whereas others succeeded. Some of them we still see today among us. This big pattern of evolution can be seen from the tree of life. But how do we know all of this? From far back in time, before the origin of life, we can only model hypotheses. However, as life became apparent, we have a great tool and proof for this tree of life, which is provided by processes on our Earth: fossils. Fossils are remains or traces of prehistoric life, which are captured in the layers of rock that make up the Earth's crust. When in ancient times an organism died, for instance this fish in an ocean, it will slowly be covered by sediment and thus captured a newly formed layer on the bottom of the ocean. When this process of deposition of new material is continued through time, the lower layers will experience an extreme high pressure, such the material turns solid to rock layers. However, the fish is still there, and other fossils might have been added to these rocks as well. But how do we then get access to these fossils that are captured very deep in Earth's crust? One example would be a river. Rivers have the ability to carve through the layers of rock when the water runs through the riverbed, as seen in the Grand Canyon in America. This process, called erosion, can cut deep valleys in the rock. Now we see that at the level of the river, we finally have access again to the lair of our ancient fish. This fish could by now be millions of years old. The oldest fossils found are even billions of years old. Such fossils give us a record of life on Earth that once existed, or still exists. With these fossils and genetic information of current species, we can build up a tree of life, a map of the evolution that led to the species alive today.
We started this travel through time from the origin of heavy elements in a supernova. These make up the building blocks of molecules that were at some point combined to make more complex structures and even functions, such as RNA, membranes, and metabolism. Then this led to the still vague origin of life on Earth. Natural selection was the driving force behind the evolution from this early life to the complex organisms that live today, and the evolution can be traced back and proven by the fossil record.